Ladies and gentlemen from around the world, wherever you are, it's a pleasure being with you here today. My name is Joshua Amatare, and we're going to be having a special program today. And we're going to have a very special guest with us all the way from the United States. This is a program that is specially designed for people who love the truth, people who are passionate about progress, about transformation, and people who really want to see the world become a better place. This is a program for people with passion, people with vision, people who actually want to see that the world is left a more palatable place than they met it. And we're going to have a special guest today from America, like I said, and he's going to be talking to us about a very important topic. It's more francophone based, and the title is going to be, "Is it true France robs Africa of billions of dollars?" That is what we're going to be discussing today. I've listened to a lot of francophone people, and they have a lot of strong opinions about this topic. We're going to be hearing from somebody who has researched the topic, who has, read wide about it and really has a lot to say about what Africa has suffered from in the hands of the French. So we're going to know if actually we're truly free when it comes to the Francophone part of Africa or not by the time we're done today. And we're going to have some solutions as well to the problems that we're going to be talking about. So I want to welcome our special guest. His name is EUGENE Salvador NGALLE. So hello, EUGENE, can you hear me?
Hello, Brother Josh. I can hear you loud and clear.
Fantastic. You're welcome to the show today.
Thank you.
So can you please tell us about yourself? Let's know who you are.
So I'm a very fortunate children of Africa, born in Africa. However, I left Africa back in 1987. Went to study in France, finished high school, went to college in France. And now I am in the United States, which is considered as the greatest nation in the world. I currently, I'm a professional in the real estate industry and also a music director for Bethel World Outreach right here in Houston. Very involved in the music, which is a great part of worship. And of course, as a child of Africa, my heart is bleeding when I see, anytime I go to Africa, I see that things have not progressed. So that's the reason why I reached out to my brother, Dr. Sunday Adelaja, that you are part of, a very important part of his team, to kind of talk about the problem, but mainly focus on the solution. Because I truly believe that the reason why Africa, at least 14 nations in Africa, are not moving forward is because there's a bondage somewhere. There's a spiritual bondage. And I'm going to use, of course, the biblical platform to find that solution, if you will.
Okay, that's fantastic. So you're well-traveled. You've lived in Africa, you've lived in France, and now you live in the United States. So your worldview is going to be different from somebody who is just a typical African or somebody who has not really traveled wide. And you're also a professional in your field, and you're also somebody who serves God with passion in the Bethel ministries. So it's really wonderful having you here with us. So first of all, the topic is, again, is it true that France robs Africa of billions of dollars? So that's what we're going to be discussing today. And those of you who are watching us, please share this video and invite your friends, invite your family members, everyone that you know who is passionate about change in Africa. Invite them to join us on this show because it's really going to be informative, it's going to be transformative. And with EUGENE here, we can only be sure that at the end of this show, we'll be happy that we joined in. So EUGENE, can you just tell us, first of all, what is the problem that you see that goes on between the French nation and the African nations?
So, in order to attack one of this very important topic to my heart, it's very important to quote former President Jacques Chirac of France, a gentleman that I had a privilege to meet. Okay, and he was president. He had 2 terms in France, but before he was president, he was the mayor of Paris, which is a very renowned city, for 25 years. So this man was in the trenches of all the affairs, if you will. He met with all top officials of the world as a mayor of Paris, and you can imagine that when he became a president, he had access to just about all the top officials, top executives around the world. But this is what Mr. Jacques Chirac said. Please, I'm going to quote him. We bled Africa for 4.5 centuries. We looted their raw materials. Then we told lies that the Africans are good for nothing in the name of religion. We destroyed their culture. And after being made rich at their expense, we now steal their brain through miseducation and propaganda to prevent an uproar, to prevent a revolution in Africa. Because their concern is, they are concerned that us Africans, we wake up and we try to turn the tide. This is a former president of France admitting that they've been looting Africa. So in order for us to get into this subject, it's very important to quote this man who had a moment of kindness, if you will. I believe his conscience was bothering him, and he decided to basically expose and bring a light to something they've been doing for 4 centuries. So I don't know if I touched a little bit on where we're going with this topic, but it was important for me to touch on that. And if you allow me, we're going to have a little history lesson as well.
Okay. Since you quoted him, I also have a quote from the same Jacques Chirac, and I'm going to read mine. It says, "We have to be honest and acknowledge that a big part of the money in our banks comes precisely from the exploitation of the African continent." The same Jacques Chirac, he said the same thing. When I was researching the topic, I was shocked that he's even able to own up to the fact that a lot of African countries have, in fact, the continent as a whole has been plundered, and that is the way that, the French government has been able to further itself. And somebody else said something, François Mitterrand, I think is his name. He said, without Africa, France will have no history in the 21st century. That was what he said. He said, without Africa, France would have no history in the 21st century. So I just wanted to add that to what you said to make our viewers know that even the French leaders are beginning to have a sense of remorse and are beginning to understand that, look, they've done a lot of harm to the African continent. And that is part of why we're here today, to bring about education and to bring about information and also solutions to the problems. So please go ahead and tell us more about this history that the French have with Africa.
So if we want a little bit of history lesson here, slavery started in Africa in the 1400s, okay? So if you do the math, that's 600 years. But let's fast forward. What happened? Of course, Europeans realized that Africa is very wealthy, very rich in natural resource. So they, of course, were there. They were getting free labor from us, from our forefathers. They realized those natural resources can make us very wealthy. Most people don't know that, but a lot of European nations start fighting over those natural resources. And in 1884, the Chancellor of Germany, of the name of Bismarck, he called a meeting amongst the European leaders. He said, guys, let's stop the fighting. How about we split Africa in territories? So this is how France got a piece, England got a piece, Spain, unfortunately, got a small country called Equatorial Guinea. You have Portugal, who has Sao Tome and Principe, and also Angola. They divided country. I am a firm believer that I am not totally Cameroonian. I'm also Nigerian, because if you look at the borders in Africa, Nigeria borders Cameroon and other nations. We are one family that was completely divided. In fact, you go to a place like Cameroon, Gabon, or Equatorial Guinea, people speak the same language. They eat the same food. It's because the European decided to divide us, to conquer, that we are in this situation. So, of course, we're going to fast forward a little bit further. After the Second World War, what happened is France was on their knees. Most people know that. If it wasn't for the intervention of the United States, the French people will be speaking German today. It's kind of a joke, but it's true. The United States came, intervened to basically stop the German assault on so many countries in Europe. So General de Gaulle, who was president in the 60s, he was extremely broke. So what happened is, he realized that my only ticket to poverty right now is to go to Africa and create a colonial pact. So this man was smart enough. He offered Africans a fake independence, but it was independence with a lot of conditions, a lot of pact sign and cooperation. And that's the way a lot of African nations became part of something we call France Afrique. Today, if you go to Cameroon, Gabon, Togo, Chad, Niger, there's a currency called the CFA. If anybody controls your currency, you are absolutely powerless. Would you agree, Brother Joshua?
Absolutely.
There's a gentleman of the name of Kemi Seba. He's a young African man. He's on fire. He's traveling around Africa to raise an awareness that African leaders need to wake up and get their countries out of the franc CFA, which is the biggest scam that you can possibly find right now on earth.
Yeah.
And Kemi Seba is not very successful because the African president actually combat Kemi Seba. Sometimes he's thrown in jail. Sometimes he can't travel to any given destination. Sometimes he wants to go to Senegal or Togo. They will deny him a visa. Why any European can travel free in Africa without any question. So the CFA is part of that bondage. So there's three pillars for France Afrique. France Afrique is simply the mafia that controls Africa, those 14 nations, but it starts from Paris, like we call it in French. So the three pillars to control Africa are such. You have the French CFA, you have the French military bases all throughout Africa, and they also choose president. You cannot be a president in those 14 countries except Paris give you the approval. So you can imagine that there's no democracy. It's all rigged. It's completely rigged. In fact, back in the days, there was a guy named Jacques Foccart. He was the one in charge of setting all presidents in those 14 nations. When he retired from that sinister occupation, a young man of the name of Robert Bourgi took over, and he's still alive today, and he admits that there is no one president in those 14 nations that has not been handpicked by France. The reason why they handpick those presidents is to make sure that the country continue to be compliant and give away their raw materials. So that's kind of the situation where Africa, those 14 nations are right now. And most people are aware of the fact that 85% of their reserve is put in the French bank. So France has the say-so when it comes to that money. And those 14 nations are forced to pay a colonial tax of the amount of $500 billion every single year since the 60s.
Wow.
If you do the math, that's trillions of dollars. Would you agree?
Oh, wow. So that means the answer is yes to the question that is the topic of this show. That means every single year or every single day, billions of dollars are being lost to the French government from Africa.
That's correct.
Wow. 500 billion every year from those 14 countries.
Absolutely.
And those 14 countries, if I understand clearly, the money that is spent is being printed in France. Am I right?
It is printed in a city called Chamalières.
Where? In France or in Africa?
Chamalières is in France.
Oh, wow. So 14 countries in Africa have their currencies printed and shipped in from France to those different countries.
That's correct.
Okay.
And a lot of people ask themselves why those African countries do not revolt, do not rebel. Well, we're going to do some history lessons again. Back in 1958, there's a gentleman called Sékou Touré. He was the president of Guinea-Conakry. And President Sékou Touré had the audacity to try to get out of the French jail, if you will, the French bondage. Well, something horrible happened to that country. The French who were stationed in Guinea-Conakry decided to strip Guinea of every infrastructure that they built in the country. So we're talking about schools, hospitals, farms were completely destroyed. They killed animals, they poisoned food, and they left the country completely in disarray. that was a very fair warning that France gave to other African presidents. If you mess with us, the consequence is going to be very devastating.
What year did you
That's one
say
of the
this
reasons.
happened?
It happened in 1958. Sekou Touré.
Wow. Okay.
He was one of the very prominent Pan-Africanists.
Okay.
He was in the forefront of those who want freedom, and they want an exchange, a win-win exchange with France. But he unfortunately ran into the wrath of a nation that is determined to bully Africans.
That's interesting. So you mean even when African countries try to break out, they're intimidated and then they're made an example of, so that when others try to do the same thing, they would look and say, look, we don't want to go through the same chaos and the same war and the same destruction that these other guys went through. And so I'm sure that after this happened, no other country has attempted it since 1958. Has anybody tried it?
Well, there was a few attempts. The president of Togo, Sylvanus, I think his name was Sylvanus. This gentleman tried to create his own currency. When the currency was issued, within 3 days he was assassinated. What happened is the French, they walk around Africa with suitcase of money, always bribing people to commit their dirty deeds. Okay, so he was assassinated 3 days later. Not too long ago, we heard of President Gaddafi from Libya, who was attempting to create a strong currency supported by the gold. His goal was to create that currency to get Africa out of the financial mess that they are today. We all know that President of France, Nicolas Sarkozy, he solicited the help of the UN, NATO, and all those guys, and they brutally assassinated Gaddafi, who was on the forefront also of Pan-Africanism.
With the help of America as well. I believe that was under the Obama administration with Hillary Clinton as the Secretary of State.
That's very true. You go into on a turf that is very sensitive to me as well. We know that there's a nation in Central Africa of the name of Rwanda, and the economy is experiencing incredible economic growth right now.
Yep.
However, at the expense of DRC, which is Democratic Republic of Congo. So Rwanda is getting rich off the coltan. Most people don't know that, but they've learned from their master. They've learned from the French. One of the things that is really interesting about Rwanda, in order for them to move ahead as they're moving away right now, they stopped speaking French. French is not the national language in Rwanda anymore.
Is it the current president that implemented that policy, Paul Kagame?
Paul Kagame is adamant about breaking free from France. This guy got super lucky because he's got a relationship with Hillary Clinton and the U.S., where apparently he received training as a military personnel. He was in the American Army. Some rumors say that he's actually a CIA agent. He's the replacement to Mobutu. Mobutu used to be the guy controlling that area for the United States. Now Mobutu passed, which is in Congo, Kinshasa. Now it's Paul Kagame, who's the right hand of the United States to take care of business in that area. And so his success, he owes his success to what he learned, the European dude. In order for you to thrive, you have to crush somebody else, is at somebody else's expense, which is sad. But because you mentioned Hillary Clinton, I kind of want to go on that tangent a little bit.
All right. So we now realize that the French actually left in just word of, okay, we're no longer colonizing these African countries, but they found another means to still control their affairs, to control the economy, the military, the resources, and everything that is good about these African countries. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So can we really say that these countries are free? Because we can see that about 27 countries in Africa right now, 29 countries, they speak French, and 21 out of that 29, it is their official language. So do you believe that the influence of France is still highly felt in this 29 and not just the 14 that have the currencies of the French?
Well, speaking French is, I will say it's kind of a weakness. It is an advantage, but it's also a weakness. As a young man from Africa, I grew up in a family that was well educated. So we were told not to speak our native languages because if you speak your native language, it's going to be at the expense of French. So in Yaoundé, Cameroon, where I was born, if you make one mistake in French, people will laugh at you. They will say that you're uneducated. So it was in your best interest to speak actually a better French than the French themselves. But at the end of the day, when you lose your identity in this process, you can agree with me that that was a failed attempt to destroy our culture. So I do speak French fluently, but to be honest with you, I'd rather speak English because anytime I speak French, that reminds me of those 4 centuries of bondage that we've been under.
And is that still the case right now in Africa? Do people still make fun of each other if they don't speak perfect French?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. People make big fun of you. In fact, if you remember the quote of Mr. Jacques Chirac, he admitted that they've alienated the Africans to the point where many Africans literally worship French. I don't know if you're aware of the phenomenon of a lot of Africans, because of lack of jobs, lack of industry, lack of opportunities, they risk their lives by crossing the Mediterranean Sea to reach Europe. To them, Europe is a paradise. Okay, many of them, hundreds of them, die every single month. For the record, what happened is when they reach Europe, they usually reach the shores of Italy. So there is a minister in Italy who he went on a rant on national television saying that, well, why those people come to Italy? We did not colonize them. They need to go to France. And because the amount of people coming to their borders is so much, it creates social unrest. So they politely ship those people toward France because they say, well, we're not looting your resources, so you might as well go to the country that loot your resource, which is France. I don't know if you heard of that minister.
Yeah, I did. He's a very young guy, about 33 years old or so. I've forgotten his name right now, but I'll look it up and let you know. Yes,
his name is DeMarco, I believe so. DeMarco.
DeMarco, yeah. He said France is bankrupting African countries and impoverishing them. Those were his words. And a lot of people took offense, and Macron himself responded in a very harsh way, and they were not comfortable with the way he spoke. But at the end of the day, it's clear that what he said was the truth, because we can see that the mentality, the colonial mentality, is still very much prevalent in African countries, especially in the Francophone areas. And that has to be broken for people to be free, because as long as you control the resources, you control the leaders, you control the banks, you control the military, there's nothing that is left for the people. They are just slaves.
That's correct. You made a very important point, and because I'm hoping that we can find solutions based on the Bible. In the scripture of Joel 2:25, God said that he's going to restore the years that the locust has eaten. That is my prayer. That's my goal for my people in Africa. And to be honest with you, the diaspora has been failing the brothers and sisters of Africa. Because most of us, let's be honest, we live very comfortable lives in the United States or wherever we are, in Europe, Japan, Australia. And it's so easy for Africans to turn their back on their own. Okay? One of the reasons why I reached out to Dr. Sunday Adelaja, because he's a man in high regards. In high regards. When I see some of the preachers who have built empire for themselves, worldwide, not only in the United States, but also in Africa, Zimbabwe, Nigeria, South Africa. My concern is very high. I'll tell you why. Do you remember the parable of the Good Samaritan?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a gentleman in the Bible who asks, I believe it was in Luke. He asked Jesus Christ, how do I love my neighbor? And Jesus Christ told him, well, I have a parable for you. Just imagine this guy, this Jewish guy was walking down the street, and he was attacked by some bandits. They beat him up. They took all his possessions. He was left for almost dead on the ground. What happened in that parable? There's a priest that was walking by. He saw the Jewish man on the ground, and he looked at his clock. I imagine he looked at his watch and say, you know what, I have an appointment. I can't miss my appointment. By the way, this guy is dead. There's nothing I can do for him. He went on by his business. You remember that story?
Yeah.
After the priest, there was a Levi, which is a high official in the church. He did the same thing. He passed by this poor guy who was on the verge of dying on the ground. That was the second guy who missed an opportunity to impress God. The third guy comes by, is a Samaritan. By the way, back in those days, the Jews used to hate the Samaritan. But the Samaritan took upon himself to take that guy, pour some expensive oil and wine to heal his wounds.
Yep.
Took him on his donkey to a hotel, motel, whatever we can call it, inn.
True.
He paid for his ability to stay and heal in that hotel. The guy was so shocked. So the reason why I bring that story is because not everybody in Africa is under the bondage of France. For instance, Nigeria, our next door neighbor. A lot of people are either not aware of the situation, or they don't care. So us as young African, we're looking for good Samaritans to create some kind of collective effort to get ourselves out of bondage. We saw Moses. Moses was one guy. He went to Pharaoh. He said, "Let my people go." Remember that story?
True.
They were in bondage for, amazingly enough, 400 years. Like we've been in bondage for 400 years.
Yep.
And after the 10th plague, Pharaoh got sick and tired of seeing water turn into blood, locusts everywhere, all kinds of chicken pox on their skin. He decided to let those people go, but they did not go empty-handed. They left with the spoil.
True.
So my take in this situation, we know the problem. And I'm hoping that God is raising young men like you, myself, Dr. Elijah, and a lot of African in the diaspora to attack that problem on a spiritual realm, because in the natural is impossible. What is your take on that?
My take on that is, first off, you said we need to attack it in the spiritual, and then my mind immediately goes to the Bible that says with God, all things are possible. That is
Amen.
number one. And then number two, I understand that one man, like you said, in the case of Moses, can make a difference. And then when we have 1,000 people like that, 1 million people like that, we can liberate the continent of Africa. There's a book by Pastor Sunday, and the title is, Could You Be the Abraham of Your Nation? And the notion of that book is people taking personal responsibility for themselves, taking personal responsibility for their nations, for different spheres of government, for different spheres of society, so that they can begin to effect change. So a question I have for you now is this. Do you have a group that you formed, or what exactly is your passion? What part of this problem do you want to attack? Because we realize that there is a French influence on Africa that is not best for the people of Africa right now. So what particular field, have you figured out a field that you want to attack, whether government, whether sports, whether banking, you're in the real estate? Because we need platforms where people who will bring about change will stand upon. So have you gotten one for yourself, or you're still in the process?
So the interview I'm having today with you, fortunately, is part of that effort to create not only an awareness, but an uproar.
Okay.
So I've approached some lobbyists in the United States.
Okay.
And I believe the best people to approach in that kind of situation are the African American. Our African American brothers and sisters who came here not because they wanted to, but they were forced to come to the United States. And we know the story. They were slaves here for many, many years. So I've approached some lobbyists. Why the lobbyists? Well, because they are very powerful. They're the one basically making things happen in Washington.
Correct.
It's necessarily a group of people that have a lot of integrity, because a lobbyist is basically somebody who participates in corruption, but is very well done in the United States, not like in Africa in the open. So I've approached some lobbyists. I'm still waiting for answer, but me reaching out to Dr. Sunday Adelaja, he has such a big platform, is basically a plea to join force with us.
Okay.
So we can unseat that pharaoh.
All right.
Even your next door president, Vladimir Putin, has made a quote. He said, it is time that Africa let go of those nations. They have already exploited those nations enough. Enough is enough. This is Vladimir Putin talking.
All right.
So to piggyback on what we've been talking about, France, anytime there is a big contract in Africa, anytime there is a big tender to be allocated to a company, they get first pick.
Okay.
They get first pick. And by the way, there's something we call in French la surfacturation. Surfacturation, I'm going to try to translate that in English. Basically, they inflate your bill.
Yep.
So if a bridge is going to cost $2 billion to build, they will charge the government $7 billion, okay?
Wow.
Very sophisticated ways to
siphon
get
money.
They siphon a lot of wealth out of Africa. That's how they finance their political campaign. That's why their coffers are full of money. And obviously we went there. Jacques Chirac admitted that. But out of those 85% of the reserve of the money that those 14 nations have in Europe, I don't know if people realize they only have access to 20% of that money. Okay?
Wow. Okay.
If they need more money than that, they have to fill out an application and loan.
A nation has to fill out an application to be able to access their own wealth.
Of course.
Wow.
It is for lack of better terms, France is bullying, extorting African nations of their own resource. And they don't feel sorry about it. They are not apologetic about it. When I was in college in France, I was very fortunate to hear a white man, the professors, say out of his own mouth, you young French man who enjoys so much prosperity, do you know at whose expense you enjoying all this prosperity? The young French men, of course, they have so much, they don't realize how the world is framed. They have no idea, no clue. It was very silent in the amphitheater. Nobody said a word. But I already knew where it was going. Because nobody dared to answer his question. He said, well, you guys enjoying all this comfort that you have in France at the expense of Africa. That was a university professor who said that live. I was fortunate to hear that. There's quite a few French people who are against those practices, but it's not enough. And just to let you know, the French in 1789, they had the French Revolution. I don't know if you know what happened during the French Revolution. The people were oppressed exactly the way Africans are oppressed. Yeah. They were very oppressed. They were poor. The monarchy was living a lavish lifestyle, and the rest of the people were eating potatoes and rice every day. Nothing, no meat, okay? So in 1789, there was that revolution that concluded in the guillotine of Louis XVI.
Yes.
They killed that gentleman to put an end to that monarchy. And it's because of the French Revolution that there's a sense of freedom today. The sense of freedom that we see in France today started because of the 1789 revolution. So how come when Africa is trying to revolt, France doesn't like the sound of it? Every single president who have tried to stand in front of the French mafia, La France-Afrique, is either killed, assassinated, or they just threaten them. Those presidents, in fact, we have another term, it's kind of a joke. We don't call them president, we call them governors of France.
Yeah,
Isn't
because
that?
the real leaders are in France.
I'm sorry.
Because the real leaders are in France.
That's correct. The real leaders are in France. That's very true.
Okay, so when I think on the solution aspect of things, one of the first principles that I've learned from my time with Pastor Sunday is something similar to what you're doing now, and which is a sense of personal responsibility. Everybody
Okay.
needs to begin to take personal responsibility first for their lives, to educate
Okay.
themselves, to make themselves aware of these issues, and then we'll now come together as a collective. Because, like you said, every president who has tried to stand up to the French government has ended up being crushed or being bullied or being intimidated. But what happens if
Right.
4 presidents come together? What happens if 5 presidents, 6 presidents come together, 7, 10, 14, 20 come together? I don't believe that the French government will be willing to go to war with us in Africa. But I believe that one of the biggest issues that we have is a lack of personal responsibility. A lot of people only see themselves as victims, and they don't see themselves as people who can actually bring about change. And I think the first change that we need to bring about is in the mentality of the people. Everybody in that Francophone country, like you're doing right now, they need to believe that change is possible. They need to believe that they can bring about change. They need to believe that whatever they've seen the French people do in terms of civilization, in terms of building infrastructure, in terms of setting up a system that works like you saw in France when you studied, we can do that as well in Africa. But I feel like a lot of people don't have that mentality. And like you said, people are being bribed in Africa. We're selling out our souls for money due to corruption. So there's a deficit in values. A lot of people are willing to sell, just like Esau, they are willing to give up their birthright for something that is very transient. They want instant gratification. So that is making them to sell out an entire nation just so that they and their families can be comfortable. So that's why this awareness is important. Everyone who is listening to us today, please share this message on Facebook and YouTube, because we need to create an army of intellectuals, an army of experts, of Africans who are in the diaspora, just like, the person we're talking to today, who would stand up to the French and say, enough is enough. Because till we stop them, they will not leave us alone. We fought against the colonialists, and still they found another way to recolonize us. And still nobody is doing anything about it. Thank God that you're bringing up this topic right now, because when I looked online for people who are speaking up or speaking against the French, I saw a few people, but there was no consensus. It's like in Africa, we're finding it difficult to come together with a single train of thought, with a single purpose, with a single goal to bring about a particular solution. So I think we need to come together and begin to speak up and begin to stand up to, and thank God we have organizations like the UN now that can speak for us. We have organizations like, different health organizations now that can help join us. The World Bank is there. They can help to speak for us as well. But we have to first take responsibility for ourselves, because if we don't, we'll just keep, going through the same circle of oppression, the same circle of poverty, and nothing much will change. What do you think?
So you made some very important points, and I'm going to bring a little bit of light to certain things that happen in Africa. This platform, of course, I'm taking a risk, but it's okay. The main problem that we have in Africa is an inferiority complex.
Okay.
There's an inferiority complex that's been going on. It started during slavery time, and then colonization, and now neocolonialism. So what happens in Africa is a lot of Africans who want to thrive and succeed in life, who want to be a part of an elite. The major problem we have, they join the occult. I'm a Christian. I'm a believer in Christ. You are a believer in Christ. We believe that He is the way, the truth, the life. But many people in Africa join the occult. By the way, all those presidents, I will bet my arm that 95% of those presidents are part of the occult. So what happened is they create a social elevator that only it requires you to get in that elevator to get to the top. You have to join the occult. And who is on the top of that pyramid of the occult? The Europeans. I'm going to give you a very blatant example. The president of Gabon. His name is Ali Bongo. He's one of the grand poobah of the occult in Central Africa. And when he was, he received some kind of, he had a ceremony to put him in power in that region. He said, "I will put the interest of my occult above my own people."
Wow.
He was courageous enough to say that on live cameras. You can go on YouTube and see that President Bongo Ali Ondimba, whatever his name is, he said he will put the interest of the occult that rule his life above his own people. So what is the consequence of that? Everybody who pretty much want to live a good life in Gabon, by the way, Gabon is one of the top producer of oil for France. If you don't join the occult, you have zero chance. Why do I bring that up? How do you fight the enemy within? Your own brother, who seems to be a nice guy, he dressed very well, but you don't know what's going on in his heart. The guy has sold his soul, literally, to the devil. Those are the people causing a difficult healing to our societies because they are within us. You don't have to look on the outside. To top it all off, you have a lot of tribalism in Africa. A country like France monetize tribalism. They go to each tribe and tell you, you're the best. They go to the next tribe, oh, you're the best. Those guys are cave dwellers. They are hillbillies. They do some kind of misinformation and propaganda to pitch tribes against each other.
That's correct.
So at the end of the day, although the French military is very present in Africa, they don't really need to be there because we fight amongst each other. We have a hard time coming together. That's the reason why I firmly believe that this problem is a spiritual problem. Us Africans, we need to learn how to love each other again. We need to love each other again and recognize who is our common enemy. My enemy is not the other tribe. My enemy is not the Yoruba people, the Igbo people. It's the people who colonize us, because back in 1884, you remember Bismarck?
Yep.
He put together a plan with all his friends from Europe to permanently defeat Africa. That's how they created colonization.
That's cool.
And okay, so how do we get rid of the occult? I went to Equatorial Guinea. Equatorial Guinea was another top producer of oil. The president of Equatorial Guinea cannot stand French. In fact, when you're a French citizen over there, you have a spy following you everywhere. They follow your every move. Do you know why? Do you know why, Brother Joshua?
Why?
When I was growing up in Africa,
what country are you from in particular, by the way? We didn't talk about.
I was born in Cameroon.
Okay, so you're Cameroonian.
I'm a Cameroonian American. That's
okay,
correct.
Fantastic. Go ahead, please.
So anytime you saw a Caucasian in town, of course, most people think, what a nice guy, or he's so nice. So they had a title called coopérant. I'm here in Africa to do cooperation. Okay? But looking back at all those activities, I would bet you that 95% of those people you see walking around are spying the society. They're spying, they're striking deals, they undermine the system, they corrupt it, and they hop on their planes, they leave a virus of corruption behind them, and they know that virus will spread. Today, as I speak, Cameroon is one of the most corrupt nations in Africa.
How long has your president been in office?
Well, that's another topic. He's been president for 38 years.
For 38 years?
Yes, sir.
Isn't Cameroon supposed to be a democratic nation?
Well, I'm glad we're having this discussion. I'm going to tell you the way it works. Remember, I told you that Robert Bourgi, who is a critical piece, a critical agent of France-Afrique, he said with his own mouth, yes, I know, because I'm part of that gang. who put together those presidents. You cannot be president in those nations if France doesn't put you there.
Correct.
I'll give you an example. President of Chad, his name is Idriss Déby.
Yep.
The guy is not highly educated, okay?
Yep.
But he had a moment, he had an epiphany moment where he said, in 2006 or 2007, I wanted to step down my position of president. But you guys know what happened.
What?
Yeah, he's asking the journalist.
Okay.
The journalist said, we don't know. Why did you stay in power? He said, well, I received quite a few calls, quite a few threats from friends. You step down from that position, your days are counted. That's pretty much how.
So they threatened him into staying in office as their stooge.
Yes, it is the governor to protect their interest. Okay? The guy.
So they believed that they had groomed him enough and they were not willing to groom someone else to take his place. So he's supposed he was meant to stay there as long as he's alive.
That's correct. They can't take a chance. Okay? Last year, in 2019, there were some rebels in Chad. They were marching toward the palace to overthrow Idriss Déby. Do you know who bombed those guys?
Who?
Take a guess.
French?
France army.
Oh, wow. So the army of France, they bombed other Africans who were trying to figure things out.
They were trying to get rid of a dictatorship.
Okay.
You don't become a dictator in those 14 nations unless France puts you there. That's our problem. So the problem is not your African brother. The problem is above. Who is above all this? Who is causing all this chaos? It's organized chaos.
Yep.
And it benefits them very much. In the Sahel is part of the desert, the Sahara Desert. There's tons of troops, French troops over there. Not because they want to protect.
About 5,000 of them from what I saw in the last statistic.
Exactly. And the reason why they're there is not to prevent terrorist attack. In fact, they train terrorists. They train terrorists. Many French agents, ex-military, or they are special agents sent by France, they train terrorists. So the reason why they're there is to protect the gold. There's tons of gold in Mali. So in order for France to continue to siphon that gold, they need incredible military infrastructure to protect, because everybody wants gold. Everybody wants diamond. Okay?
Yep.
You take a country like Niger. Niger has tons of uranium. That uranium is what keeps the lights on in Paris. When people shopping around Paris, they hop on the subway, the RER, they call that the RER. All those things function because of the uranium of Niger. But if you see the amount of poverty that's going on in Niger, it is ungodly.
Wow.
It is ungodly. So the main problem in Africa, not only we have to address those leaders, try to figure out a way to get them out of the occult. Hopefully they can give their life to Christ, because Christ is the truth, the truth, the way, and the life. Correct. Most of those leaders are on their way to hell because they sold out. We need to get them saved. There's few presidents who accept Jesus Christ, which is great. I think the president of Brazil just accepted Jesus Christ. I don't know if you heard.
Bolsonaro, yeah.
Okay, so we need to pray for those presidents so they can get out of the occult. Many of them are still alive. They still have a chance. Even Paul Biya. I mean, I met the guy. I love him. Unfortunately, he's too subservient to the French.
Who is that?
He's in power. Paul Biya, the president of Cameroon.
Okay.
I met
so
him.
you
He's
met
a very
him,
nice
and he's
guy.
a nice guy, but he's not willing to stand up to the French.
You can't. I mean, your days are counted. In fact, they'll kill you and your whole family. I don't know if you remember, in 2010, we going back in history. In 2010, there was an election in Ivory Coast. At that time, President Gbagbo was the president.
That's correct.
In place. So after they counted all the ballots and everything, he believed that he won the elections. And his opponent called Alaman Draman Ouattara. This guy say, no, I won the election. You didn't win the election. So they got into a fight, and it was an ugly fight. You know how the fight ended.
Yeah, there was a semi-war, even an all-out war.
And France, you will see French helicopters in the air of Abidjan. They start bombarding the palace of President Laurent Gbagbo, somebody who was officially elected by his people, because they love Laurent Gbagbo in Ivory Coast. They bombed his palace. The French army and the UNICE, I think that army is called UNICE, which is part of the UN. How can you possibly go bombard another nation?
Wow.
With UN helicopters, UN tanks? Because, you know, as long as France, NATO, the United States decide that we need to get you off your seat, you are done. Laurent Gbagbo was humiliated. It was a coup. It was a coup. They got him off power. They sent him to a court in Europe. He spent, I believe, 8 years in jail in Europe. Thank God he did not get killed, like many of his peers in Africa. Yes, many of his counterparts didn't make it that far. His wife probably got raped. It was horrible. And until today, many Africans are very upset to what happened in Ivory Coast. Let's rewind. Back in 1987, the entire continent of Africa was crying because there was a young man of the name of Thomas Sankara. Thomas Sankara was a very prominent Pan-African.
Yeah.
He stood up to François Mitterrand. He told François Mitterrand, with all due respect, Mr. Mitterrand, it's high time that we start having a win-win exchange here.
Yeah.
Please care about the people of Africa as well. We want to eat. We want to eat at the table, at the buffet. We don't want the crumbs of France anymore. President François Mitterrand told him, young man, you're going too far. You need to put, you need to polish your delivery because you don't know who you're messing with.
Wow.
Do you know a few months later, France orchestrated the assassination of Thomas Sankara by his best friend of the name of Blaise Compaoré. The entire continent of Africa was crying because we saw our way out. So I don't know if you see the pattern.
Yeah.
Anytime a leader, because Laurent Gbagbo, whether it was Laurent Gbagbo or what's his name, Thomas Sankara, all those guys want to free us. Modibo Keita in Mali, Sékou Touré in Guinea, okay? All those guys want to get us out of the bondage, but they always run into the wrath of one small nation of 60 million people, France. How can you explain that 60 million people control 160 million people? That doesn't, there's no match. We're supposed to have an upper hand. And by the way, speaking of Ivory Coast, there is 450 soldiers, French soldiers in Ivory Coast, controlling a population of 20 million people. Wow. They own that place.
Wow.
Ivory Coast is one of the #1 bread basket of France, because anytime they need to drink coffee, cocoa in the morning, all those delicacies, it comes from Ivory Coast.
Do you mean that Ivory Coast doesn't have its own army?
They have their own army, but for the record, if you want to be a general in any of those nations, where do you go in training? France.
Oh, wow. And all the leaders also trained in France. So from the military to the banking.
It is a system to brainwash you to be more loyal to France than to your own people.
Like you, for example, you're Cameroonian and you were schooled in France as well.
I almost lost you for a second here.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you perfectly.
Aha, okay. I was talking about you. I said all the leaders in Africa, they were schooled in France, or they had their education from France. So it's like they were brainwashed to come back and remain subservient to France.
That's very true. In fact, when it comes to the army, it is a prestige thing to say that I've studied in so-and-so school in France. I forgot the name of that, Saint-Cyr. There's a school in France called Saint-Cyr. Most generals in Africa have received training in Saint-Cyr. But part of that training is to brainwash you. When you graduate from those schools, they make a call to the presidents of Africa. We should call them governors. Hey, so-and-so is a good guy. He listened to us. So give him the position of general. So 450 guys, 450 soldiers in Ivory Coast control the army of Ivory Coast. They control the entire nation of Ivory Coast. Who put in power Alassane Ouattara in power? Those guys, with the support of the UN.
Amazing.
To better siphon the wealth of Ivory Coast. Those are the problems that we're dealing with. This is a bondage, very similar to the children of Israel. And unless God give us the knowledge, the wisdom, the savoir-faire to get out of that bondage, it's going to be a very gloom future for a lot of Africans.
I believe that you came to the right place. Thank you very much for giving us all of these facts and all of this history to enlighten people and make them understand what we're up against. Because we in the Anglophone world, we don't really understand what goes on in the Francophone area of things. You know, we're just figuring out our own problems by ourselves. You know, we're struggling with corruption, like, you know, in Nigeria. And then when you look at other, like Ghana, they're figuring things out as well. And everybody seems to be making slow progress. But it's good to know that, you know, in the French-speaking world, there's an outcry for something better. But do you think that an average person in the Francophone world, do you think that they actually want change? Do you think that's something they want?
Right now, there is definitely an awakening. Okay? There is an awakening that is present. However, like I told you, the problem is within. We have agents of the devil. I mean, that's the best way to put those guys. Agents of the devil among ourselves who do not want to give us the key to be free. Those are the officials. Okay? I give you an example. Not too long ago, the president of France, Emmanuel Macron, he sent an invite. It wasn't really an invite. He was, I don't know how to say that in English. We call that in French convocation. Convocation when you are called to the principal office.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
When you're summoned.
He summoned 5 presidents in Africa to come see him in Paris.
Okay.
You need to get here. I'm just throwing a date. February the 15th. So those 5 presidents went to Paris to give account to Emmanuel Macron. Macron asked them, apparently there is an anti-French sentiment that is rising in Africa. Why is that? Those guys had to answer to Emmanuel Macron like a kid, a 3-year-old answer to his dad. Why did you eat the whole chocolate box? Okay?
Wow.
So those guys went to Paris, and they had to give answer. Why is it an uproar? I'm going to make a suggestion to you guys. Do you want us in Africa or you want us out of Africa? It is a subtle threat. Do you want me in or you want me out? Because if you want us guys out, you'll be on your own. Do you understand the subtle threat that is wrapped around this meeting?
Yep.
So you see some grown-up presidents that are in the 60s, in the 80s, and they hop on the plane to go see a young Emmanuel Macron in Paris. Isn't that insulting?
It's extremely insulting, and it's very sad that at this point in time, we still have, Africa is still basically, a large chunk of the continent is still going through slavery.
Yes.
And it's quite sad. But I feel like, you know, you talked about God giving us wisdom and understanding and knowledge. I feel like we already have that. And I believe that that's one of the reasons why God connected you with Pastor Sunday, because he has helped to lead a revolution that is similar to what is needed in the Francophone world here in Ukraine. I'm sure you've read about the Orange Revolution.
Yes.
If you read Pastor Sunday's book, Church Shift, you will see how he was able to figure out his way out of the chaos that was the former Soviet Union, the former USSR. And you know,
Okay.
they were a lot more heavy-handed than even the French are right now, or at least to an extent. And God was able to give them victory. And one of the things that the Bible tells us is that was the purpose of Jesus coming is that he came to set the captives free. So if the
Yes.
French world is in captivity, there is a way out through Jesus. There is a way out through Christians. There's a way out through the church. There's a way out through the people. And one of the things I will never forget that Pastor Sunday said in that book, Church Shift, which I think everybody needs to read who wants to bring about change, he said, God told him, he said, the people are the power. He said the power lies with the people. Something happened last year in France when Emmanuel Macron gave them a higher tax in their gas prices.
The Gilets jaunes.
Yeah, the yellow vest, they began protesting. They protested for 1 month, for 2 months, for 3 months, for 4 months. They protested for 10 months. In fact, I still saw them protesting in December because they wanted change. Same thing happened with the Chinese and the Hong Kong protesters. The Chinese wanted to oppress Hong Kong, but the Hong Kong people said no. They took to the streets. 1 day, 2 days, they started calling on the West to support them. So I believe that a revolution is ripe in Africa, but it takes somebody who is knowledgeable to begin to spread that knowledge. Like Pastor Sandy right now has a blueprint of how to bring about national transformation. And I think that if you read this book, you can begin sharing it with your friends who are from the French world, and then they would begin to develop a mentality and a boldness. The inferiority complex you talked of will be removed because people automatically begin to develop strength that comes from God, that comes from knowledge. They will begin to understand that the French are not better than we are. People in France, the white man, they are not better than we blacks. We in Africa, we have what it takes to run our own continents, to run our own countries, and to bring about the change that we want to see. We can become a first world continent, a first world country, just like Europe if we want to. But it starts with knowledge. God lamented, he said, my people perish for lack of knowledge. He didn't even lament because of the devil. He didn't lament because of demons. He didn't lament because of evil spirits. He lamented because he said, my people perish for lack of knowledge. You said something. You said there's a problem within. And that is what needs to be solved. And that problem can be solved first through Christ. Secondly, through knowledge. By the time we educate ourselves and we make ourselves to be cognizant of what we're capable of as Christians, as human beings, we will no longer be bound, because there is no way you can keep an enlightened mind caged in bondage. Mandela said something. He said the best cure for poverty is education. And I believe that that was his own way of saying, as long as people are enlightened, as long as there's education, as long as there is knowledge, you cannot keep anybody bound, you cannot keep anybody poor. So I believe that is something that needs to happen, because if people take to the streets a revolution led by the church, a revolution led by people who are not self-centered, people who are not selfish, I'm very sure that the French will not be able to withstand it, because like you said, just 450 soldiers are running an entire country of millions of people. They are only able to do that because mentally they have enslaved those people, and they've made them believe that they cannot be free. And they need the French people, they need people from France. But the moment these people begin to realize that we can be self-sufficient, because the Bible tells us that we are complete in God. We don't need anybody from the outside. All we need is already on the inside of us. We already have the resources on the inside of us. We have the ability, we have the mental ability, we have the resources in the ground. We have all it takes to prosper. But we have to begin to take our own steps to make sure that we bring about this change. So I talked about Church Shift. It's there on the screen. If you go on Pastor Sunday's YouTube page, it's called Sunday Adelaja Official. You will see different series. One of them is How to Build a Nation. You will see, there's also a book. You will see different messages that are taught step by step of how transformation was brought right here in Ukraine. And I believe the same blueprints can be used in Africa, because humans are basically the same. We have the same ability to learn, to unlearn, to relearn, and we have the capability to be creative, to innovate. And I believe that is where Africa needs to go to. Also, there's another book, How to Transform and Build a Civilized Nation. That is another book that Pastor Sunday has written based on his experience here in Europe of how Africa can build its continent. So I believe that we are the solutions that, Africa is waiting for. And we can start from the inside. If the people in France did not give in to Macron, we in Africa, we should not give in to him. These were people in his own backyard. They said, no, we are not going to pay this tax. We are not going to accept that you tax us out of our existence, in fact, because they said, we don't have enough money for transportation, we don't have enough money to buy gas, and now you're telling us to pay even more. And he was forced to go back on that offer. Am I correct?
That is correct.
He rescinded the tax, yeah. So it shows that it's possible to actually stand up to bullies and win. David stood up to Goliath and won. You talked about Moses. He stood up to Pharaoh and won. The Bible is full of stories of people or experiences of people who were against all odds able to win. And I believe that the Francophone world can do the same as well. So Pastor has a lot of materials on his YouTube page, Sunday Adelaja Official. If you go, you will see a lot of messages on how to build a nation, how to build. A lot of people, personally have their own inferiority complexes. There's also a series on how to discover yourself. Who am I? Why am I here? How people can discover their purpose in life, how they can, overcome all their complexes. Because when you overcome all of those things, then you're able to understand what's happening on the outside of you and bring about change. I think it was Sun Tzu that says a man who knows himself as much as he knows his enemy is not going to be defeated, right? We seem to know our enemies more than we even know ourselves. So if we're going to win against the French, we have to clean house on the inside. The church, the educational system, the NGOs, we have to start going back to Africa to start educating people and opening their eyes to this truth, which is part of what we're doing right now. I don't know how many people are watching us from Cameroon, but if you're watching us from Cameroon, from Togo, from Côte d'Ivoire, from Niger, from Chad, any of the countries, Francophone countries, we want you to know that you don't have to keep bowing down to the French, to France. You can be free. And it can start with just one person in their room saying, I am going to bring about a revolution. I'm going to educate myself. I'm going to educate every other person around me. And I'm going to make sure we take to the streets, we take to anywhere we need to go to peacefully protest till we get our freedom. So what do you think about that, EUGENE?
Well, what you say is very enlightening. The only problem in Africa is France has put those dictators in place to oppress their own people. Mm-hmm. You cannot protest in France, okay? The yellow jacket, we call it in French, les gilets jaunes.
Yeah.
If you do a gilet jaune protest in Africa, mm-hmm. I can guarantee you are dead. You're going to die because the army is going to oppress you. They're going to kill you and no question asked. So kind of to go back on a couple subjects.
No, wait, let me say something about that first. One thing about revolution is that you must be willing to lose your life.
That's correct.
If you're not willing to die for something, then there's no point living at all. So
that's correct.
If maybe 50 people take to the street, they might be able to shoot them. But if 5,000 take to the street, if 500,000 take to the street, I don't know if you saw it on TV when the Ukrainians were protesting in a place called Maidan. Over 100,000 Ukrainians came out to the center of the city in sub-zero weather. It was -5, -10. They went to the center of the city and they were demanding that the president at the time, who was corrupt, must leave. And they won. Till today, that president is still on exile in Russia. They ousted him and they were able to get that victory. So, like I said, the principle is that the people are the power. Once you empower the people and they come out in mass, there are only so many people as you can kill before the world will begin to say, hey, enough. You cannot kill 5,000 Africans without the world taking notice. You cannot kill 50,000 Africans without the world taking notice. You cannot kill 500,000 Africans without the world taking notice. So imagine if 50,000 people in Côte d'Ivoire, 50,000 people in Cameroon, 50,000 people in Togo, 50,000 people in Mali all rise up and say, enough of this. How many people are the French going to be able to kill?
That's
but
very
it all
true,
starts with an organized system of enlightening the minds of the people and making them to know that this thing is possible, and if we're going to accomplish it, whether by life or in death, we must bring about change. Because even those who die, they're leaving behind a better place for their kids, they're leaving a better place for their grandkids, so we must be willing to bring about that change, because if we're afraid, they'll keep using that fear to rule over us. As long as you are afraid, you can never be free. Because as long as they know that when we threaten this guy, he wants to preserve his life, so he's not going to step out of bounds, they would keep doing it. So we need to break that barrier of fear. Remember that the Bible says there is no fear in love. So anybody who truly loves their country, who truly loves their neighbor, would break out of every fear through the power of God, through the power of knowledge, to begin to take on forces that on their own they cannot take on. But don't forget, you said something that was important in the beginning. You say it starts from the spiritual. That's another
Yes.
formula that Pastor Sunday had. He said he did a lot of praying to empower yourself in the spirit, because standing up against these forces is not normal. The Bible says we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and wickedness in high places. So we start enforcing, the change in the spirit, empowering ourselves in the spirit, empowering ourselves with knowledge, and then we begin to organize among ourselves. And that is why I believe that the church has a huge role to play, because the church is a place where every Sunday people gather en masse. And that is a very good place to begin to teach the truth, to begin to empower people, to make them realize that we can change things. We don't have to just come here and sit down and play religion. We are the light of the world. We are not the light of the church. So if we're going to bring about change in Gabon, in Cameroon, in Mali, in Congo, we have to begin to step out of the church to begin to bring about change in the different spheres of society. Those who love football, they go to the footballers. Those who are bankers, they're talking to the bankers. Those in fashion, they're talking to those in fashion. Those in government, they're talking to those in government. Those who are in economics, they're talking to the economists as well. So in every sphere, we're raising people from the church, saviors from the church, lights from the church, who will go into different aspects of society to shine as light. So even if you take out one person, there are 5 or 10 other people just like them. So it's going to be like, we're going to grow. The Bible says that the kingdom is like a mustard seed. When it's planted, it grows up and then it takes over the entire place. So that is the principle that we need to begin to use in Africa. And it's strange because all these countries you mentioned, they have mega churches that have at least 10,000 people fellowshipping there every single week. But they keep telling these people that, oh, God is going to do some kind of miracle. They keep preaching the prosperity-centered gospel. Meanwhile, they are in bondage. They don't realize they're in Egypt. But if these pastors open their eyes and begin to realize that we have a mandate from God to set the captives free, they will begin to act like Moses. They will not just be acting as people who are there just for themselves. So the aspect of people losing their lives, trust me, when you're ready to lose that life, the Bible says you will gain it. As long as you're standing up for God. Mandela was willing to lose his life. Did he win or not? He won. So there's just so many people they can kill. They can kill 1, 2, 3, but they can't kill 50,000. We're 1 billion people in Africa right now. At least 1 billion people. The French can't take on us. Like you said, they're just 60 million. They're not even up to half. They're not even up to half of Nigeria. By the time you guys start speaking up for yourself, trust me, we will join you guys. The Anglophone will join you guys and say, enough is enough. We are Africans and we want to control our destiny. We refuse to be slaves anymore. And I believe the French people will bow out, because already, even without much force, their power is waning. It's not as strong as it was, because now they're having competition from the Chinese, from the Turkish. As far as economics go, it's no longer a monopoly with France. So I believe that change is possible. And as long as people are willing to lay their lives on the line and organize. You said there's organized chaos. We need to organize righteousness. We need to organize freedom. We need to organize liberation for ourselves. And that way, changes will come. What do you think?
You're absolutely right. So one point I want to bring to you is Africans, of course, in those 14 nations, they have been in despair. Okay, so this is what happened in Rwanda. We all know that 20 years ago, Rwanda went through a horrific ethnic cleansing war between the Hutus and the Tutsis, right? So, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm hearing you.
So what came out of this, President Paul Kagame, he literally hired a pastor from the United States of the name of Rick Warren.
Yep.
You remember the guy who wrote The Purpose-Driven Life?
Yes.
Rick Warren has a church in California, and he sent about 2,000 of his members to Rwanda to teach on paradigm shift.
Okay.
Okay, so that teaching has been going on for the past decade, and you see the transformation. Because we've been in bondage for so long, a lot of people in those 14 African nations, although they may confess that they are Christians, there's a lot of doubt in their hearts. They wonder, has God abandoned us? Is there really a God? So the byproduct of that attitude is going to serve strange gods. There is a lot of people in Cameroon, Togo, Ivory Coast, Gabon, Congo, all those countries. People go look for power in the dark. They go visit the juju parlor, the witchcraft parlor to gain power. And one of the reasons why it's happening is because they see all the people in power, all the officials in the government are accused of being part of the witchcraft. So people looking for power at the wrong place.
You see, the church is not doing its job because the Bible says, greater is he that is in us than he that is where? In the world.
Very true.
So the people in the world,
Very
they're
true.
the ones who are displaying their power. The people in the world, they're the ones
Yes.
who are using their power. People in the world, they're the ones who are actually going after what they want, which is why they seem to be the most admired in society. If the church was
Right.
carrying out its responsibility, if Christians were carrying out their responsibility as light, they will be the ones being admired, and people will be going to. The Bible says, let your light so shine before men that they will see your good works and then glorify your Father which is in heaven. So we're supposed to be an attraction, but because we're refusing to
Yes.
take our place, the world is taking it over and they're becoming the attraction instead of us. So something has to change.
Exactly.
Something has to change, and it starts from our
That's it.
minds.
That's exactly why I reach out to a general of faith like Dr. Sunday, because he has a platform that is obviously touching thousands, hundreds of thousands, who knows, maybe millions of people. You know, as a Christian, sometimes you have to take the humble road. If you realize that your ways are not working, you have to reach out for help.
True.
And the reason why I'm in this platform is to cry out on behalf of those millions of people who are suffering in Africa.
We're hearing you.
They have no way out. Some of them, their way out is to end up in the Mediterranean Sea, to end up being a shark lunch or dinner. And that is very sad that people are reduced to go that low. So as the church, what do we have to do? How can we petition God's intervention? How can we pray, fast, and make sure that people see signs and wonders coming from men of God so they can give their lives to Christ? Because that's the problem. People don't even believe the men of God anymore because they don't see any signs and wonders.
True.
Because in order for us to overthrow the stronghold of witchcraft that is on top of all the president or the governors of Africa, we should call them governors instead of presidents, they have real power. We have to pray for those folks so they can be saved. The Bible say that we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against all the principality in high places. The Bible say that the weapon of our warfare are not carnal, but they are mighty through the pulling down of stronghold.
True.
Are we really able to pull down those strongholds? Because
we are.
if we can't do it, people are watching. They will laugh at us. I know tons of people in Cameroon. They have a hard time believing the Bible because they just don't see the manifestation of God.
That's true.
So I know our interview is almost getting to wrap up, but one very important point I wanted to bring up. The diaspora has a big role to play in this.
That's true.
I am in the United States. You can drive a few miles on the left, few miles on the right. There's a Chinese restaurant. I did some research. Those small restaurants boosted the economy of China. It was the diaspora from the United States and around the world, those Chinese sending massive amount of money to China, that created the strong industry we see right now in China. Okay?
Yep.
So what the African diaspora is doing, do we have a responsibility? The only thing we care about is living in a 5,000 square feet house, 4-car garage with a pool in the back. Those things are not bad, but once they become a distraction and an opportunity to completely forget where you're coming from, that's where we have a big problem. Because let me tell you, there's not a day or a week that somebody is not calling me from Cameroon and say, it's very tough here to live. It's very difficult to live here. There's no opportunity. One day I was in the airport in Yaoundé. I was surrounded by a lot of youth. They were in their 20s, some in their 30s. They had degrees, but they couldn't find a job. Do you know why?
Why?
they were sharing with me that in order to have a good job in Cameroon, you have to participate in sodomy. You have
Wow.
to get sodomized by somebody and you get a job. You have to join the occult.
What exactly
So,
is the church doing in Cameroon?
well, the church, they having Sunday services, of course. They have Wednesday services. They sing Kumbaya, like they sing Kumbaya in Congo, in Gabon, and all Ivory Coast. But you don't see the hand of God moving.
Don't we have
So
Christians who own companies and businesses and things like that?
very few,
Why?
very.
Why is that? Don't they have the same education that people in the world have?
They have education. The thing is, the society is rigged. The society is rigged. When you have too much corruption in a society, it's very difficult to navigate in that platform because you're going to run into some hurdle that you never even thought of. In order to open up a small company in Cameroon, the amount of people that you have to bribe, the amount of money that you have to give, at the end of the day, you have nothing. You have nothing.
I
So when
understand.
a society is so chaotic, we have to look for the solution. We have to point toward the solution. And I know Jesus Christ of Nazareth has been a solution. Uh, I remember this small man called Gandhi. Gandhi, one man, he was not even a Christian. He freed 1 billion Indians.
Correct.
1 billion. One man. They were marching the streets peacefully. I'm sure some of them got killed, but they were able to get England out of their territory. They ended years of bondage. So I
Gandhi
see
is one
all
of
those
the
Christians.
guys. Sorry to cut you off. Gandhi is one of the guys that I love the most because he did it in a peaceful way. And when I was
Yes.
reading his autobiography, something that I saw that was very unique was his love for the Bible. He got the
Okay.
Bible from a friend just as a gift, and he read
Okay.
it like a novel from the beginning to the end. And I was like, there are a lot of people who are Christians who actually haven't read the Bible as much as somebody who is not even a Christian but was passionate about knowledge and wanted to bring
Wow.
about change. And hence, he was able to get it done. So I think we're going to take a caller today. If you're watching us and you want to call in and contribute to the things that EUGENE Salvador has told us and that we've discussed, please call, just go to Facebook, Move Agents Magic, and call in, and we'll give you an opportunity to just for within the next 5 minutes to tell us what you have heard and what you think about the topic today. So I believe, just type and then we'll call you back on Move Agents Magic and we'll be able to get you on so we can talk and have your opinion aired to everybody. So I believe that, like you've said, change is possible. Absolutely, 100%. We just have to be willing to spread the word. Like you said, there are people who are ignorant and they have no knowledge. We have to be willing to share this knowledge with them. We have a caller, right? All right. Hello.
Yes, this is Innocent Magaji calling from France.
Oh, wow. You're calling from France.
Yes,
The very country that is plundering $500 billion out of Africa.
exactly.
Wow. Good to
What
hear
is the
from
name?
you. Go
What is the name
ahead.
of the brother? The name of the brother. What's his name?
Eugene.
Bro Eugene.
Bro Eugene, can you hear him?
I salute your knowledge, your vast knowledge. It was. Is he with us?
Hello? Yeah, I think he should put on his earpiece.
Is he hearing?
Can you hear him, Eugene?
Okay.
Cannot hear anything from that person.
Ah, okay. Do you have an earpiece that you can put on?
All right. Okay.
Me?
Eugene, yeah.
Well, I'm hearing from my speaker.
Ah, okay. We're having technical difficulties, but just go ahead, Magaji. I'll pass your message across to Eugene. He can't hear
All
you right
right,
now, but
all
I can
right.
hear you. So go ahead.
All right, okay. It's a very little compliment about his vast knowledge because it was completely refreshing understanding that there are youth adults today who are thinking about the progress of Africa. I heard everything he tried to analyze the role that France is playing, and I also like the idea, the proposition you made about Dr. Santa Deta's, the book he wrote about what Africans can do. I also encourage people to go out and look for it. There is something in addition to what you said and everything that he said. There's something I personally discovered that our people are already tired. about this entire situation. So in order for us to find solution,
Mm-hmm.
yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. You went off for a second there.
Are you with me?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Oh, okay. All right, okay. So what I want to do, I will not speak much. I will just speak briefly so that others will come in and contribute and give their contribution. I wanted to give just a few things, just to propose something. I'm very sure Mr. Eugene knows about Orange. He knows about Bouygues. Those are telecommunication services that France offer to Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So this is it. This is the point I'm making. Nigeria currently has 5 satellites. And South Africa has 5 satellites, 6 satellites. Ghana has 1 satellite. Rwanda recently launched 2 satellites for telecommunication in Africa. Apart from some of these countries, the other country that have satellite is Egypt and other African countries. So what is interesting here is that we have to, the Francophone countries are not in charge of their, they have to contribute to their communication. They have to be independent. They have to be personally independent. They have to be in charge of their telecommunication.
Okay.
So it's not. So when we talk of independence, it's not all about political independence, but also economic independence and security independence, for instance. So in the case of Nigeria right now, we have a situation whereby our satellite were officially launched by Obasanjo, and then the second satellite were launched by Yaradua. But we have a situation whereby the satellite was built, launched, and is managed by foreigners. So that means that our communication are vulnerable. That is Nigeria for you. But in the case of those Francophone countries, their communication are entirely in the hand of France. Their telecommunication, their internet service, and everything is owned and controlled by France. So this is what I want to say to Eugene. As individuals, we can be able to contribute. We can be able to give our own personal contribution. So when I started finding out some of these loopholes in the system, I think we can also give our contribution. So me, personally, since I discovered that most of our satellites are being controlled by foreigners, I've taken the initiative on my personal level to make sure that I galvanize, raise funds and start up an initiative whereby I can set up an independent supply of the internet and in the satellite, low orbit satellite for Africa. That was because we cannot wait for our government to do that. We cannot keep complaining about the problem and not doing anything. On an individual level, we can be able to do something, like we can be able to contribute to the system. So our friend, what I want to say to our friend Eugene is that apart from, observing and finding those problems, those loopholes in the problem that we have, he can be able to do something on a personal level. So let him identify what he's good at, what he can do to contribute into the system. So when he does that, 2, 4, 5 other people can be able to join him and do what they can do by hijacking the system gradually. Because today we're talking about the problem, but we hardly, we talk about revolution, of course, revolution like the Orange Revolution in Ukraine. But people can, there are things that happen as events, but they cannot remain there. So private individuals who have identified this problem have the honors to go into the system and solve the problem. I've come up with personal initiative. I say, okay, I will go on and then solve the problem of satellite in Africa. So I said, okay, I'll go in there and build all the satellite system in Africa and try other things to do. Okay. Anyway, this is all I can say. Let's go in individually and contribute to the system. We should identify the problem and identify what we can do on individual level. That's what we can do. Thank you so much. That's my contribution.
You're welcome. All right, Eugene, I'm going to just say that based on everything that he has said, it's best that you just go back and watch this part of the show so that you can hear everything he said. But it was just centered around
I was able to hear what he said.
Did you hear what he said?
Yes, I was able to hear what he said. Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
My assistant was able to get me to listen.
Okay.
So I understand that personal initiative is paramount. Okay, to move forward. That's very true. What the gentleman forgot to mention is that one of the goal of Gaddafi was to put enough satellites in orbit to serve the African nations.
Yes.
And because his plan was going to deprive France of billions and billions and billions of dollars, those are the reasons why Gaddafi was killed. Not just because he wanted to create a currency. He also wanted to put some satellite in the air. He was using his own money.
Yep.
Okay. So I appreciate that he brings that up, but this is cutting the branches.
The
This is
root
just cutting
is
the
still
branches.
left.
The tree is still there. The tree is still there. I appreciate. Let me tell you, Cameroon is a nation of people are very intellectual in Cameroon. People have degrees. They went to school, but looking back, those degrees are not serving them. Okay, what is the point of having 2, 3 PhDs, but you part of the occult, and you part of the group that is selling out your whole society? I have people in my family who have joined the occult. I have uncles, I have cousins. So those are the people literally putting sand in an engine. They make sure that the engine is not going smooth. If you put sand in an engine, that engine will stop functioning. Would you agree, brother?
Yeah, that's
Josh?
correct.
Instead of sand, we need to put oil in the engine to lubricate. So we need to get rid of that corruption that was brought to Africa through the occult. The occult, and they infiltrate churches. That's another thing. We ask about why the church is not doing anything. Part of the occult, they send agents in churches to pollute the atmosphere, to make sure that the anointing does not take off. Okay? I don't want to go into a tangent and talk about the Catholic Church, but the majority of Africans are Catholics. And for a Pentecostal guy like me, I know the Catholic Church has a lot of heresy. People don't really believe. They go to the Catholic Church on Sunday, but all throughout the week, they're going to do Santeria. Santeria, which is, you see that a lot in South America.
That's
okay?
true.
The majority of those people who call themselves Christian in Africa, quote unquote, they are Catholics. That's why there is no revival. And we need to create a revival that will sweep that place. We need to get rid of the strong man. The Bible talks about strong men. Strong man in the Bible is a spiritual thing. We bind the strong man behind problems. We have to bind enough. Catholics are not charismatic. They don't even believe in those kind of signs and wonders. They don't believe in casting out demons and things of that nature. They just go to church. They're going to confess to a father their sins, and they go home. They don't read the Bible for the most part. Many Catholics are becoming Pentecostal, which is a great thing, but it's not enough. A country like Cameroon, the majority of people in Cameroon are Catholics. If you go too deep in the Bible with them, they would think that you're part of an occult. And when they see a church on fire for God, they call it an occult. They don't even want to enter that place.
Yeah, they did the same thing with Pastor Sunday here in Ukraine. They said he's a cultist.
I know about it. I know about it. He's a miracle. He's a miracle. Pastor Sunday is a miracle. He's a hidden secret. I know about it.
Eugene, hang on a second. I'm hearing that we have one more call. So I thought that our time is fast spent, but we'll take one more. So are you okay with that?
Yes, sir.
All right, please put the person through. Hello. Okay, while they're still waiting, hello, can you hear me? While we wait for the call, let me talk about some of the books that Pastor Sunday has written that would help to bring about this liberation. Could You Be the Abraham of Your Nation? The Kingdom-Driven Life, How Every African Nation Can Become a First World Nation, The Value-Driven Nation, Where Are the Heroes? Let the Heroes Arise. Hello. You Are Born to Make Your Nation Great. So these are books that have been written to bring about knowledge and enlightenment to the people of Africa, and to help to solve a lot of the problems that you have highlighted today. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Who am I speaking with, please?
My name is Lucien. I live in the US. I was born in Cameroon.
All right, welcome to the show, Lucien. What do you have to say about our discussion today?
I thank you, EUGENE. Bonjour. Thank you for bringing out the problem of the French speaking part of Africa in this platform. And also thank you, Joshua, for the fact that, I was really happy with how you elaborate how to solve the problem of of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you that it's one of the main way to solving the problem of Africa is education. Within us, starting first of all with the heart, helping people to discover God and
Mm-hmm.
helping people to discover who they are, their potential,
True.
helping people to discover how they can influence their society, helping people to discover how they can be national transformer and changing nation. And that's one thing that I like with Dr. Sunday's book. I mean, it's just well written, and then it's so inspiring that just with all those books, you will find a lot of ways how to build or create system that will help you bring about change in
That's
the
true.
in the place. And also, you also mentioned the fact that so most of the time you have like maybe 50 people protesting,
Mm-hmm.
but when it comes like 50,000,
Mm-hmm.
100,000,
Mm-hmm.
that's another that's different. It's
Yep.
totally different. So I believe that if we just start doing some kind of I don't know how you say, like, where this we just start educating 10 people and 10
Mm-hmm.
people educating 10 people,
Mm-hmm.
and in few years we'll be like more than 100 or more than even million.
That's
So
true.
it's just a matter of time. And also I also wanted to know where my brother live. I wanted to how to be in contact with
You
him
wanted to
if it's
connect with him.
possible.
Yeah, his contact is right
Yeah,
below the screen. It will be put there now. He's on Facebook, his email address, his phone number. He's in Houston, Texas. So if you just look below right now, you will see his contact information so that you guys can connect in the US and probably form a group of like-minded francophone people for change. And I believe
that's
that
right.
in the near future we'll be able to get the French people from France out of Africa so that Africans can begin to run their own economy, run their own countries, and be the better for it. Thank you very much for calling.
I'm Joshua. I have one more question, please,
Okay, all
to
right, go
my
ahead.
brother EUGENE. Uh, what did he think about the issue of Cameroon right now, the killing that is going on in the Anglophone region, and the post-electoral crisis?
All right. Eugene, did you hear the question?
If you can repeat, can you rephrase the question for me?
He said that what do you think
What,
about the killing that is taking place in the Anglophone area of Cameroon right now?
Well,
and the
that killing is,
post-electoral crisis?
my opinion on that is the French are most likely behind it because the attitude of the Francophone have been a little condescendent, if you will.
Okay.
They did not show compassion toward their brothers. I'm a Francophone. I'm not proud to be a Francophone. In fact, I'm just a Cameroonian because when you think about it, I am not from France. They call themselves Anglophone. They're not from England. We are Cameroonians. However, the folks who speak French in Cameroon are the majority, but they did not uh, take too much consideration on the suffering of their brother in the Anglophone zone. And what's happening is the government is being very unreasonable, to say the least, regarding that situation. Instead of having a peaceable conversation, well, they decided to go to war with those people. But guess who is benefiting from that war? France. Who's selling weapons in Cameroon? France. Okay, France doesn't sell weapons in the United States. We don't need their guns here. We have plenty of guns in the United States. So the biggest market for the junk, I'm sorry for using that word, is Africa. They sell their cars, they sell the weapons, everything. They sell their refineries and all the savoir faire that goes behind the oil, the rigs, and all that. They sell that to Africa. Okay, so it benefits France to have a war. When there's wars in Africa, France make tons of money.
So
Okay,
we have to stop
so
fighting each other.
well, the thing is, those people have agents, ex-mercenaries. That's their job to go create wars. They provide the weapons. They pitch each tribes against each other. The main problem in Cameroon is tribalism,
Mm.
and the church is not doing a great job about it because tribalism is a cancer. tribes hate each other. Okay, and right now is the francophone against the anglophone against the francophone. They need to come together and forgive one another. Okay, the anglophone need to forgive the French speaking side, and the French speaking side need to forgive the other anglophone, because uh, they they use incendiary, they use very bad language to insult each other. Okay, they pour oil on the fuel, and it's not helping. But the government of Cameroon, they've been very unreasonable with those people of the English part. My heart is bleeding for them, because about 60,000 of them are now fleeing to Nigeria if they still are alive. Many of them live in the bush. That's not the Cameroon that left. Cameroon is a very peaceable place, but because there's a lot of oil in Bakassi, in that Anglophone area, there is some evil forces from the outside who's telling them, guys, become a nation. Become a nation. We're going to support you. And so we can loot your oil. Okay, it's been information leaking about it. The people who call themselves Ambazonian, they are basically, people are behind them to encourage them to stand against the government of Yaoundé. And because both parties are very they don't want to give their position. Everybody is standing on this ground, and it's creating a lot of casualties. Many lives have been lost, and it's not necessary. That's not the Cameroon that I know. I'm just praying that God restore peace and love in that nation, because without love, love is the bond. Without love, we are doomed for failure. Regardless of education, you can have all the education in the world, but if you cannot love your neighbor, you're wasting your time.
I understand. Thank you very much for everything that you've said. And like I said, the change begins with us. And you, as a person who has picked up this passion, it's best that like now that we are on this platform, you know, other people will contact you and they will begin to share with you, and you guys can form a group, because together we can accomplish more. Just one person on their own in the diaspora cannot do much, but we need a team of people. We need a group of people who will set up NGOs, who will set up companies like Margaret you talked about, who will be willing to go back to Africa to begin to put pressure on the groups that are holding, or the strongholds that are in those places or in those countries currently. So I hope a lot of people contact you after this, and you also keep reaching out and seeing how you can keep building a consensus abroad, so that eventually we'll be able to go back to Africa and take that place over for God and for ourselves. Because I believe God gave us that land for a purpose, and it's ours for the taking. And it's up to us. God gave the children of Israel the Canaan land, but he didn't fight the battle for them. He only empowered them, and they had to go and take the land for themselves. So it's up to the Francophone people of Africa to take their land back for themselves, one step at a time, by educating people, by talking to each other, by praying with each other, by making sure that we create opportunities for each other. We love each other, like you said. There's a book as well that Pastor Sunday wrote, which is How to Practically Love People. That book is something, all these books I'm talking about, they're on Amazon. You can go on Amazon and you'll be able to get them. And if you're in Africa, you can go to dsabooksplanet.com, and you'll be able to get all of these books as well. And I believe that as we keep educating ourselves, and as we keep praying and, you know, sharing with each other, we'll be able to have victory. So once again, thank you for joining us today, Eugene. Do you have a final word before we go?
Well, my final word is as such. If you remember, I used the parable of the Good Samaritan. When I look at a nation like Nigeria, Nigeria is probably 75 years ahead of Cameroon, 75 years ahead of Chad, Congo, Ivory Coast. You guys have infrastructure that we don't have.
Okay.
So we literally calling on our brother Nigeria to come help out, to be that good Samaritan to us.
All right.
We asked Dr. Sunday, with all the influence that he has worldwide, to join petition to free ourselves. Is not a very pleasant thing to do, because when you are in jail, you cannot ask your jail master, can you please let me out?
No.
You remember when Paul and Silas were in prison, they prayed, and If it wasn't for an earthquake to shake that prison cell, they will stay in that prison. We need prayer to shake the ground,
The foundation,
and break the foundation and break the atmosphere open, so the heavens can open up upon us. Because our natural resources are a blessing and a curse. Those natural resources, we don't transform them. That's the reason why our nations are poor. If you look at nations like Malaysia, Singapore, Korea, and Hong Kong, they transform things that they don't have. But look at how powerful those nations are. They have the biggest port on earth. It's time for us to transform our own raw materials, whether it's coltan, whether it's cocoa, coffee, avia. All those things need to be transformed on the land of Africa. We need to create industries, but in order for us to get ahead, we're going to need an intervention from God, because we are surrounded by an enemy who does not slumber, which is France. So we're calling on Nigeria. We're calling on all the diaspora around the world to join force to make it happen. Do not be passive. You saw France, they received their freedom in 1789, la Révolution Française, because they went on the street, they fought. They even killed a king. Whatever it takes, we have to make it happen, my people. But the main thing I'm telling to France, which is our Pharaoh, let my people go. Pharaoh, you heard me. Let my people go. The prince of the air, which is the enemy, Satan, you heard. Today, let my people go.
Amen.
And we are coming strong. We are coming strong with the blood of Jesus Christ. The Bible says that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony.
Amen.
We need a testimony out of this battle. We want to be able to showcase that God has the upper hand. God is not a weak God. He's not dead. He's able. He's capable of setting his people free.
Amen.
So those are my last words, and I'm hoping that it's going to touch thousands and thousands of my brothers and sisters around the world to join this fight. That is first a spiritual fight.
Thank you very much, Eugene. I believe that everyone has heard you, and God as well has heard you. And I believe that victory is assured in Jesus' name. All right. Thank you very much for joining us today. It was such a pleasant time. Please share this message on your Facebook pages, share them via email, share them on Twitter, so that everyone around can be aware, because knowledge is the first step to gaining freedom, so that you'll be aware of what's happening in the Francophone world and the oppression that France is putting on a large chunk of the African continent. So once again, thank you for joining us. We'll be here same time next week. Please make sure that you get these books. Make sure that you share, as much as you can with your friends, because they are the ones who would help bring about this revolution. We cannot do it alone. We have to be peacefully but intelligently going about our goal of liberating Africa. And I believe that as we do so, as we take steps, conscious steps to bringing about change, we will accomplish it, because with God, all things are possible. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a very good day, and God bless.